Be clear, and I've read the law. It does say the IRS shall turn over their returns after a legitimate request from the chairman.
And the Supreme Court has said that you can do that if you have a legitimate legislative purpose. And with due respect to the congressman, he said there's been a lack of transparency. He thinks the president should have put forward his tax returns before he announced or when he announced his candidacy for president, which sounds interesting, but unfortunately, it's not the law. For the United States. We don't have a requirement that presidents do that. This president decided not to because he has an ongoing IRS audit. So that's number one. What is the legitimate legislative purpose? Number two is the Supreme Court has said that on multiple occasions that congressional oversight cannot become law enforcement. So this idea that the real reason that the Congress and Chairman Neal has asked for these documents is because they want to know if the IRS is doing its job in auditing the president. Well, they could ask the IRS, what job are they doing? What are their audit procedures? But this idea that you can use the IRS as a political weapon, which is what's happening here, is incorrect both as a matter of statutory law and constitutionally. We should not be in a situation where individual private tax returns are used for political purposes. As you just said, George, what stops another party from you doing the same thing? And by the way, a lot of these congressmen and women... No, he hasn't. Congress has. A majority of the majority party in the House has. The president has not. The president has not asked for Nancy Pelosi's tax returns, which, by the way, and it's in the letter that my colleague sent forward on this issue, they have not asked for or have produced, they've not produced their tax returns. It's not a requirement that they do, by the way. So this idea that you're using a hearing, a Ways and Means hearing about IRS enforcement as a way to get to the president's private, individual, and business tax returns makes no sense both constitutionally and statutorily. And look, this I think is going to be, if necessary, we're not at that point yet. If it has to be litigated, it'll be litigated.
It is the decision of the IRS commissioner. Is the president going to order the IRS commissioner not to turn them over?
The president isn't ordering anything. What we've done is, and I disagree with the congressman here, George, as the president's counsel, we have the right to protect his interests as a private citizen and as president. And so what you have to look at here is the idea that Congress would say, I'm not very happy with the way George Stephanopoulos is handling his interviews with various members of my party. I'm going to look at his tax returns. If I was your lawyer, I'd be objecting. And by the way, I do have a right to object, and my colleagues that authored the letter have the right to reject, and that's exactly what has been done here. The Constitution and the statutes need to be filed. 6103, by the way, overall, so you know, is a confidentiality provision with limited exceptions. And again, there has to be a legitimate legislative purpose.
As you heard, the congressman said
and by the way, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The congressman said they're not contemplating releasing it. He said this would just be for the chairman to review. I do want to turn on to the Mueller report.
Well, hold it, George. Not contemplating they're releasing it. They release it. It's a felony. So, of course, they can't release it. I mean, so this idea, we're not contemplating releasing it. They need to read Section 6103. Well, 6103 says if a person releases it, it's a crime.
Right. They could vote to release it in closed session. But I take your point on that. Let's move on to the Mueller investigation. It certainly seems from the president's tweets over the last few days and his comments and those